The Rabbit device has been getting a lot of flack since it dropped. It's an AI device, of course, that it's like its own thing. You can go take pictures with it and ask it what it sees. It uses AI to give you feedback. It can answer all sorts of questions. It's supposed to be like a personal companion. And while a lot of people are saying, it can do everything that a smartphone can do, they're saying, look, this is a totally unique device. It's only, I think, like $300 or $200. So it's not like crazy expensive compared to something like the Humane Pin. But recently, it has been getting a ton of extra flack as people have realized that essentially it is just an Android phone. It's running on Android. It's doing everything an Android phone has done. They've cracked it. They've released an APK. There's a ton going on that's really interesting. I'm going to be reading a bunch of different comments over on X, Twitter, that have been going over this. Emily Shepard kind of did a whole roundup thread on this that I got a lot of great data from, so shout out to Emily. But I want to go over the whole drama because the CEO of Rabbit has been tweeting and people have been tweeting at him, and there's tons going on there, so it's really excited. So let's kick this all off. So this all kind of got started back on April 30th. Marcel put out a tweet. He said, okay, so people already cracked the Rabbit R1 and found out it's Android. People duped the APK and I got it working with root and a few mods on a standard phone. So he literally got this thing running on a regular Android. It does all this stuff. When you shake it, just like the regular device, it lets you ask it a question. It's doing everything that the regular Rabbit device can do. Now, there's some really big security issues with being able to do this, and I'm going to go over them. But I did want to say, after he tweeted that out and he showed kind of a video demo of him using it, we got a response from the actual team over at Rabbit. And they said, Rabbit R1 is not an Android app. We're aware that there are some unofficial Rabbit OS app/website emulators out there. Rabbit is customized for the R1, whatever. So they have this whole tweet about how this is definitely not just an app, because that's kind of the criticism it got a lot of the time, was people were like, hey, cool device or whatever, it looks cool, it looks fun, but like, why isn't this just like an app? Why do you have to sell an entire device? Why aren't you just making an app out of this? So their response also included a very interesting claim that they essentially, when they're saying this is an app, they're saying that they were using, quote, and this all comes from their Discord server, by the way, that they were using, quote, very bespoke AOSP and lower level firmware modifications. So yeah, anyways, Jesse had a previous claim where he said that this was a very heavily modified AOSP. And AOSP means Android Open Source Project. So essentially this is kind of like Android without Google's code. So there's no like Gmail or OK Google embedded into this, but it's essentially Android. And that's kind of the purpose of Android. It was an open source project, so anyone can go in and kind of use this, but you don't get all of the cool Google features if you're just forking it and using it open source versus actually being on the Android ecosystem. So in any case, they're saying, yeah, we use that and we heavily modified it, whatever. That was kind of their thing. So then we have Jess Liu, who is the CEO of Rabbit. He went to X and he kind of got mad at Mishra Rama, who's kind of the author of the Android Authority piece. That's an article that was written on Android Authority. And when they essentially said that, this is an issue, and he said, quote, why that bootleg APK is not working, try now. And, pretty much like taunting him, being like, we fixed the error, we fixed the crack or the leak or whatever, so you won't be able to use that APK anymore. And I think a lot of people have said this is kind of a bland response and it wasn't very professional. They should have probably acknowledged the flaw and tried to, secure their API and then moved on. But instead, because he's kind of goading him, you can kind of imagine what happens next. So now everyone wants to go and hack this APK and go use it. So Mr. Rama then wrote another article. This time he was kind of directly challenging some of the claims that Rabbit was making. He includes an uncut video that showed him installing the R1 app onto a normal phone, and its features worked just fine. So of course this is kind of refuting and not making them look really good. Marcel, who kind of made that original video of the crack, responded to showing that it worked again on his device, right? Because Jesse, was the CEO of Rabbit, was saying like, oh, we fixed it. We shut down the thing with our security, and both of them are showing like, no, it still works. They also said that Rabbit's IM checking didn't actually work. IMEI is a unique identifier for mobile devices, right? So it's pretty much not checking that it's only like your account was only working for one device. Why does all of this matter? There's a couple things. I'll go more into the drama, but one of the really big issues here is that this is a device you buy one time and it doesn't have a subscription. But if you're hooked up to like it's costing money to run these AI models. And so people are like, how is this working? Like, how are you going to buy it and get a subscription? Are they going to stop supporting this at some point? Contrary to like the Humane AI pin, where when you're wearing the Humane pin, it's like $700, but then you got to pay, I can't remember, like $50 or $20 a month, something like that, to keep getting service, which is essentially paying for the cloud and the usage of all of the different AI models, right? So this is interesting. We then had THEL31, who demoed that the R1 app running on a different Android device could be instructed to save notes back to Rabbit's official backend, which they call the rabbit hole. So this is also not good, because if it's not just like they cracked it and they forked it and now you can kind of use the same technology and slap your own white label on it. You literally can crack it and then still have it, like your new device, be saving things onto the Rabbit backend, which they're definitely paying for. So this is, obviously a big security issue. Someone else also showed that you could use the R1. So on the R1 device, it's got like this little scroller on the side of the device, and they want you to use that. It has like a screen, and people have demonstrated that it's actually fully functioning touchscreen, aka pretty much an Android phone, but it's actually disabled mostly unless there's like, I think 1 or 2 like things that you can do that enable the touchscreen, but mostly they want you to use this little scroll bar. Kind of reminds me of the original iPod classics, where you had like the scroll wheel to like scroll. They just have like a little rolling bar, like a roller on like a mouse that you can use to scroll. People have complained about it, but whatever. I mean, it works. But what people have also showed, they're like, look, you could literally enable this on an Android TV, because it's just an Android app. And if you have it on an Android TV with the mouse, clicking up and down on a mouse is this equivalent of scrolling, because the scroll wheel sends D-pad actions just like a TV remote, keyboard, or any other accessory that you'd have. So that's really interesting. Then we had Chromo Mob, who is showing that the vision feature on the R1 app, which is running on his phone, right? So everyone's just like turned it into an app and is running on their phone. He could essentially read and understand a bunch of things from Rabbit's own Discord server. So, he's just kind of making fun of them. It has also been demonstrated a bunch of different times in a bunch of different ways that the Abbott R1 does not run on a very heavily modified, or what they say, bespoke AOSP. So kind of that was a lie, if I'm being 100% honest, right? Like they said that, but obviously if you can just put this on an Android phone, then it's not true. It's not running on anything custom. I don't think anyone really cares that the R1 is just based on Android, but I think that people do care that the official Rabbit CEO and the company of Rabbit are saying that this is definitely not an app. They're probably saying that for like investor reasons, or for, I don't know, to try to make it seem like the big criticism is like, why aren't you just an app? And they're like, well, we're like super different, super unique, super custom. So, I mean, it's a cool device in any, like either way, in my opinion, but like it's definitely a bad look having to lie to everyone and telling them it's something that it's not. So I think Rabbit right now, though, regardless of this whole PR nightmare that they might be having, I think they actually have bigger problems on their hands right now. And that is the fact that if you can run the R1 on a different phone, what's to stop you from running it on a different device entirely? And what's to stop someone from taking the app Rabbit R1's API and putting it on a device and slapping their own logo on it, and then essentially making Rabbit pick up the tab for it? Or if you are super malicious, you could run thousands of virtual R1s in the cloud and completely overwhelm Rabbit systems. Like, it just seems like this is a really big security issue. All of this is theoretically possible because while your activity is tied to an account in the rabbit hole, accounts only need an email address to set up. So email addresses are really cheap, and an attacker could make an account, as many accounts as they want, really. So the problem is pretty much unique to Rabbit because all the other AI services are subscription-based. So that means that user accounts on these services are tied to a payment method, and the bank has to do like most of the heavy lifting to verify the user's identity. Emily recently on X was saying that it seems pretty inconceivable that they wouldn't have thought about any of this before launching. By then, it also seems inconceivable that their security would be so easily bypassed twice, or that they would try to prevent or pretend that their app wasn't an app. It's obviously just an app, right? So I think this is interesting. This is obviously a huge mess that Rabbit's going to have to sort out. The big problem here, though, in my opinion, is like it's going to be tricky for them to try and change their API without completely bricking a bunch of the older devices. And it seems like this is probably something they should have figured out before launching. But, this is V1 of a product. This is kind of what happens. So yeah, very interesting. We haven't gotten any updates in over 24 hours from Rabbit, so I'll definitely keep you up to date if they say anything else. But this is definitely a huge drama. Very interesting. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you learned anything, I would really appreciate it if you drop us a review, leave us a comment, or subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.